Hello, my fellow WEAC delegates. My name is Michael Jones. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm a proud black man. I'm a proud Vietnamese man. I'm a proud special education teacher. And for the last 4 years, I've been proudly serving as president of Madison Teachers Incorporated. And as I finish my last term as president and I gratefully return to the classroom, I sit here asking to be your next NEA Director. An NEA Director has a lot of responsibilities, but chief among them is speaking truth to power, representing every Wisconsin public educator, and by extension, our kids and our communities at the national level, is to understand that this is not a neutral role. And while we can be as friendly and cooperative as the next person, we must refuse to be compliant in the face of such naked hatred and aggression by the Trump administration against anyone different from them. I remember the exact moment I refused to live a life of silent compliance. 14 years ago, I was sitting at the Capitol, waiting to speak at 3 o'clock in the morning to the Assembly Committee about how Act 10 would damage the future of my new chosen profession. I was a second-year special education teacher in Middleton, just barely keeping my head above water after an intense first year in Milwaukee on an emergency license. I needed a stable and supportive system if I was going to effectively support my students with disabilities. I wanted to speak about my need for mentors with their own rights, increased funding for our system, and the freedom to meet my children's needs and my colleagues to meet their children's needs without worrying about some bureaucrat's compliance list. But before I could speak, Representative Robin Voss stopped the hearings because he had heard enough, and he said I didn't deserve to speak. And since then, when given the chance of playing it safe or speaking truth to power, I have always chosen the truth. And as your next NEA Director, I promise you that I would always choose to speaking the truth over keeping quiet to maintain a false sense of security and civility. So what has speaking out delivered for my union? I've led changes in my local's governance systems and structures so more members have had a voice in their union while maintaining our cost of living for the last 2 years. I've aligned my union with local, state, and national entities to sit on the steering committees of campaigns like the Fulfill the Promise campaign, which is a national campaign for the full funding of IDEA going on since 2021. I also sit on the NEA Strategic Campaign Steering Committee, working on a national movement for 2028 to not only fight Donald Trump, but to fight the social and economic inequities that plague every single person in our unjust society. I'm also part of the state delegation to bring the Alliance to Reclaim Our Schools movement to Wisconsin. And I'm an organizer within the Wisconsin Public Education Network to fight for our state's mutual education interests. I've been a recognized presenter at NEA leadership conferences, multiple National Council of Urban Education Association conferences, and have co-facilitated the advocacy sessions at the WEAC Summer Leadership Academy for the last 3 years. This past year, I had the honor of serving as a Wisconsin delegate to the National Democratic Convention, where I directly told Governor Tony Evers that his compromised budget with the GOP in 2023 harmed my school district and my state and my kids, and I need him and our Democrats to stand up and fight instead of figuring out new ways to concede and comply. This is admittedly an aggressive stance, but I'd rather be honest and upfront about how I'd represent you as my constituents than promise you that I'd be compliant to maintain a facade of cooperation. I know too many educators, too many people of color, too many people with uteruses, too many LGBTQIA+ people, and too many people with disabilities to compromise my values to be electable. And compromising our values will get us and our kids nowhere. Frederick Douglass said it best when he said in 1857, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress." Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without the thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters. This struggle may be a moral one, or it may be a physical one, and it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you will have found out the exact measure of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them. And these will continue until they are resisted, with either words or blows or with both. The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress. I want to be your next NEA director because I believe we will endure. I believe together we will demand better, unapologetically, and while we will struggle together, we will never submit to hatred and division in our schools, our communities, and our union. Solidarity.